What's cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. What up, what up, what up, what up? Back with another reaction video. This time, paying our respect, paying homage to one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Oscar Robertson, aka the Big O. And like the video suggests, the man the game forgot. Oscar Robertson is a guy that not too many people roll his name off their tongue and out of their mouth. For a man that played 14 seasons at an elite level, more or less his entire career at an elite level, his prime was extraordinary. You could even argue his prime started in his rookie year. It's crazy to me how this guy's name is often left out. And he even has a championship. Now I'll run down some accolades and general information regarding Oscar Robertson real quick, and then I'll leave the rest up to Clayton Crowley to give you guys a more comprehensive and detailed idea, or maybe for some of you a refresher, reminisce on Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson is actually credited as being like the first big guard. Oscar Robertson was 6'5", 205 pounds. Drafted out of Cincinnati, 1960, territorial pick. Selected by the Cincinnati Royals. Like I said, played 14 years, 1960 through 1974, with the Royals and the Milwaukee Bucks at the point guard position. Oscar Robertson won an NBA championship with the Milwaukee Bucks, 1971, with the boy Alcindor, aka Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Oscar Robertson won a MVP award in 1964. He is a 12-time NBA All-Star, 3-time NBA All-Star Game MVP, 9-time All-NBA First Team, 2-time All-NBA Second Team, NBA Rookie of the Year, 6-time NBA Assist Leader, to name a few. Oscar Robertson is notoriously known as the first player to ever average a triple-double. And no one thought it would ever be done again until Russell Westbrook did it. And now you'll have a you'll have a handful of players each year that are usually flirting with averaging a triple-double. It's the way the league is now. Oscar Robertson was also the first player in NBA history to ever average more than 10 assists per game. And the good thing, well, the interesting thing about this, what people don't really pay attention to, this was during a time when the criteria that was required to get an assist was much more strict than it is today. Hell, even 15 or 20 years ago, the criteria to get an assist was more strict than it is today. Robertson is also the first guard in NBA history to average more than 10 rebounds per game. Oscar Robertson to score inside, outside. As you all know, average a triple-double, so he's definitely playmaking, exceptional playmaker. In his rookie year, he almost averaged a triple-double. In his rookie year, he averaged 30.5 points per game. And Robertson averaged more than 30 points per game in 6 of his first 7 seasons. In Oscar Robertson's rookie year, he almost averaged a triple-double. Like I said, 30.5 rebounds, 9.7 assists, and 10.1 rebounds. And it would be the year after, in his sophomore year, where he officially averaged a triple-double with 30.8, 12.5 rebounds, 11.4 assists. And all the years after, he was pretty much flirting with a triple-double. He had a double-double. He was just, fractions of a value off of getting that triple-double. Absolutely extraordinary. On top of all his accolades, this was his career statistics on his basics. For points, 26,710 points total for a 25.7 point per game average. 7,804 rebounds for 7.5 rebound per game average. 9,887 assists for a 9.5 assists per game average. Damn near 26 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists. And has an NBA championship. How this guy continues to get left off of lists or just being acknowledged, I don't know. I don't know. But I'll let Clayton talk about the rest. Hope you all enjoy. Let's get into it.
Legends. The players that are remembered long after their playing days end, and indeed long after they too pass. The players that live on in mythology and reverence, that have influenced the game we see today. They are players who have set records, won championships, and captured our attention, etching their legacies into the foundations of this game. A legend is special, not simply because their talent set them apart, but because their stories transcend the individual. In fact, to me, that is what a legend is. A remarkable player who tells a story that enthralls us. So today, I'd like to talk about the legend of Oscar Robertson.
Look at that boy, got the fresh cut with the waves. See you, Oscar. Big old baby.
What do you know about Oscar Robertson? You've been told that he's one of the greatest players ever. You know that for over 50 years, he was the only player to have averaged a triple-double for an entire season. And you know that he played a long time ago. You might even know that he spent time playing for the Bucks at the end of his career, winning a championship with them in 1971. And that's probably it. You probably can't tell me where he spent the majority of his career, or where he played college. And that's not your fault. I'm not saying that to be an asshole. I'm saying it to point out that the story of Oscar Robertson, one of the greatest players in history, has been forgotten. Probably the most buzz the Big O has gotten in recent years was in 2017, when Russell Westbrook did the unthinkable and averaged a triple-double for a season, breaking Robertson's single-season record for them and winning the league MVP award in the process. After 55 years, Oscar Robertson finally had company. But that's kind of the thing, right? He was no longer the only. The most enduring part of Oscar Robertson's legacy, his singular feat of averaging double-digit figures in 3 different statistical categories for an entire season, was not only matched, but it was eclipsed. Russell Westbrook repeated the feat for the entire 2018 season. It's not like Oscar was eclipsed by Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson or LeBron James. He was passed by a player who, to put it lightly, has fallen out of favor over the last several years. And so, the luster
Don't get me started on how they
on Oscar Robertson's crowning achievement has faded. But that stat isn't the only thing that makes him great. Like all legends, Oscar Robertson has a story to tell. First, know that Oscar Robertson holds grudges. He does not forget, and he takes everything personally. He grew up in the segregated projects of Indianapolis, first making waves at Crispus Attucks, an all-black high school named after the first man shot in the Boston Massacre, a black man. In 1955, his junior year, the Tigers went 33-1 and became the first all-black basketball team to win a state-sanctioned championship ever. Achievement could have been a purely positive one. The championship parade route that the Tigers rode was different from that of every other Indiana State champion before them. Rather than be paraded through downtown, they were taken out of central Indianapolis. They thought the blacks were going to tear the town up, and they thought the whites wouldn't like it, Oscar remembers. He remembers the parade for the previous year's champion. Women bringing pies to the kids, and men waving flags as they rode past. By most accounts, this was the first real scar that racial injustice had cut into Oscar. The fact that an all-American parade for a group of teenagers in America's heartland was not given to them simply because of the color of their skin. Little changed after Oscar led the Tigers to an undefeated season and a second consecutive championship the next year, the first perfect basketball season in Indiana high school history. For his efforts, he was named Indiana's Mr. Basketball. Think about that. Of all the states in America, where does high school basketball mean the most? Not where it's the best, not where it produces the best players, just where it means the most. It's Indiana. And here is the golden child, this trailblazing, jaw-dropping talent of the state. And neither he nor his team were allowed to celebrate in the same manner as white teams. The moment was not lost on Oscar. And remember, Oscar holds grudges. He kept finding grudges to hold. Although he was emerging from high school as the top prospect in the nation, he had to categorically remove prestigious programs like Kentucky, Duke, and North Carolina from his collegiate perspective, simply because he was black. Even Indiana, his preferred team in his own backyard, seemed disinterested. He ended up choosing the University of Cincinnati. One, because it was still close to home. And two, because Cincy offered him a chance to gain recognition playing against teams in big markets like Philadelphia and New York. Which he did. In his first year as a varsity player, Oscar Robertson led the Bearcats in points, rebounds, and assists.
No surprise.
In his varsity debut against Seton Hall in Madison Square Garden, he scored 56 points. A record at that point for the most points ever scored in MSG by a basketball player, college or pro. Seton Hall scored 54 points as a team. Oscar averaged 35 points a game, becoming the first player.
You saw that pump fake? I forgot to mention this. Oscar Robertson is notoriously credited for being the first guy to basically originate the pump fake and the fadeaway. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I've read.
To lead the nation in scoring in their first year of varsity play. Cincinnati finished the season with just 3 losses and ended as the second-ranked team in the nation. Oscar took home a trove of Player of the Year awards and named an All-American. He was in a class of his own. Nobody had ever exploded onto the national radar of basketball like Oscar Robertson. In just one season, he had established himself as the best, most complete basketball player that any spectator, opponent, or teammate had ever seen. Despite his talent and recognition, though, he did not become a celebrity. And I don't even mean he didn't become a celebrity in the way that players today do. He was harassed, excluded, and insulted. He was only Cincinnati's second black athlete ever. When the Bearcats made trips to the South, Oscar was forced to stay in the dorms of nearby all-black universities, while his teammates stayed in hotels. Racial slurs were hurled at him with impunity. Fans of opposing teams would throw programs and debris at him. And on his first trip to the South, the Grand Wizard of the KKK wrote him a handwritten letter warning him that if he were to come to the South, he would be killed. All the while, Robertson harbored resentment toward his university, his coaches, and his teammates for what he perceived as a lack of support. Because it's not like the racism he faced was only on the road in the South. In Cincinnati, on the very same block as the university's basketball stadium, stood a segregated theater. Next door to the building in which Oscar Robertson rewrote college basketball's record book was a theater he could not enter. No matter what he did, nor where he was, Oscar Robertson was never allowed to forget that he was a second-class citizen. He used that injustice. Possessed by that fury, Robertson unleashed holy hell. He forever changed the perception and responsibilities of a guard. In his junior season, he led the country in scoring, was again named the Player of the Year, and carried the Bearcats to the Final Four. His senior year, the exact same. The nation's top scorer, college basketball's Player of the Year, and an appearance in the Final Four. By the end, Oscar Robertson's Bearcats had compiled a 79-9 record in his 3 seasons at Cincinnati. He left the college game as its all-time leader in both points scored and points per game. Today, he still stands 11th in total points and 3rd in scoring average. In over 60 years of college basketball since he went pro, only 10 players have scored more points, and only 2 have scored more on a night-to-night basis. His resume as a college basketball player seems like it could only take place in a video game. A 3-time Player of the Year, 3-time scoring leader, with 2 Final Four appearances, a 79-9 record, and left as the sport's all-time leading scorer. After graduating in the spring of 1960, Oscar Robertson was drafted with the first overall pick by the local Cincinnati Royals. He would make his NBA debut later that fall, but not before he represented the United States at the 1960 Olympic Games as co-captain of the men's basketball team. The roster included future Hall of Famers Jerry Lucas and Walt Bellamy, a slew of future NBA All-Stars, and Oscar's fellow co-captain, Jerry West.
Hey.
They won their games by an average of 42.4 points and are considered the greatest collection of amateur basketball players in history. But all the while, all throughout college, it seemed that fans never really got to know anything about Oscar Robertson the man. The appreciation for his talent was absolute, almost reverent. He was described as a marvel of agility, grace, and disciplined skill. That he had mastered the economy of movement, each decision methodical, succinct, and with no wasted effort. That his 6'5" body was supremely blended and proportioned with a fission-fast nervous system. But that's where the appreciation ended. What Robertson thought or how he felt was a mystery. Part of that was because he was never too keen to share it. The other part of it is the fact that reporters were never too eager to press Oscar. Because they knew that he disliked his conditions. They knew he had begun harboring some level of animosity toward the city of Cincinnati. And so, rather than report on his antipathy, they simply let him be. Oscar Robertson made his NBA debut on October 19th, 1960 for the Cincinnati Royals. They beat the Los Angeles Lakers by 17 points, and Oscar recorded a triple-double of 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. Later that same year, Oscar would have a standout performance against the Celtics and Bob Cousy, the face of basketball and the game's first real point guard. After the game, the question on everyone's mind was not if Oscar would make it in the NBA. They wondered if he would go down as the greatest basketball player to ever play. His rookie season is arguably the greatest rookie campaign in professional basketball history. He was a breadth away from a triple-double average, led the league in assists, was named the Rookie of the Year, selected as an All-Star, and won the All-Star MVP award. The Royals missed the playoffs with a 33-46 record, but the expectations had been set. Oscar Robertson was going to do things that had never been done before. Now, there's no easy place to go from here. Oscar's career is a little messy. It's complicated. He submitted some of the most eye-popping, outstanding statistics and performances imaginable, but he never made the finals in Cincinnati. Here are the results of his 10 seasons with the Royals. The team's record, his statistics, and how the season ended. We'll get into a couple of details later, but it's worth noting that he did average a triple-double in 1962, setting the record for most triple-doubles in a season with 41, and breaking Bob Cousy's single-season assist record by 184 assists. It's also worth mentioning that the Royals had the second-best record in the league in 1964, as Oscar submitted his best season and was named the league's most valuable player. It's a little startling though, isn't it? Those box figures are outrageous, but there's more first-round losses than you'd expect. So what do we make of it? One of the things that stands out the most to me in Oscar's career is the lack of "holy shit, that was one of the greatest games ever played" stories. He is outrageously consistent, incredibly productive. But other than that Seton Hall game in college, I just couldn't find many examples of those singular big game heroics. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can't knock a guy who consistently puts up 30 to 35 points a night on great shooting with the rebounding abilities of a power forward and the best passing instinct in the league. But it is an observation. And there are excuses to be made for the team's performance. Cincinnati was a notoriously inept, cheap franchise that was routinely undersized and poor defensively. Oscar was locked in a conference with two of the most dominant athletes in American sports history, at a time when his sport was ruled by giants. Maybe if the Royals were in the West, he would have made a finals or two. And who knows, maybe he would have snagged a championship. To that point, in the decade of the 60s, the Lakers won 58% of their games. The Royals won 52% of theirs. The Lakers appeared in 6 NBA finals. The Royals appeared in none. By the same token, Oscar pushed the Celtics in the midst of their dynasty to 2 deciding games and was the most statistically productive player in the league other than Wilt Chamberlain. You could argue that unlike Russell Westbrook, Oscar's success was just the limit of what one man could do or be in his situation. Remember how Cincinnati reporters didn't want to probe Oscar too much because they were afraid of getting to know how he felt or what he thought? Well, we know now how he feels and what he thinks. And it's not always pretty. Oscar was bitter. Some say he still is bitter. It's a word that's been used to describe him countless times. He refused to sign an endorsement deal with Converse in the 90s because in his playing days, Converse did business with white athletes, but never came for Oscar Robertson. 20 years after he stopped playing, he was still holding grudges. In his day, he could be mean, he could be cruel and unforgiving. The rage had never left him, and he obsessed over every play, every pass, every shot. He was relentless in his aggression, toward the opponent, but also toward coaches and teammates alike. His teammates respected him to the ends of the earth, but they played in fear of him. They felt sorry for each other after he would ream them out for errors and mistakes. He was Jordan before Jordan, in more ways than one. But where Jordan seemed to build confidence in his teammates through his berating, Oscar seemed to tear it away. And he's made few friends since leaving the game. His 2003 autobiography has been described as angry, articulate, thoughtful, agitated, and self-congratulatory. He took shots at everyone he felt had wronged him, pointed fingers at others who had let him down, and never failed to mention his own significant contributions. In the new age, he has become the grump, the old guy complaining about how much better things were in his day. A hoops curmudgeon who protests that in his day, the players were better, the coaches smarter, and the ball rounder. He's the kind of guy whose wife has to tell reporters that he's actually much funnier than he seems and happier than he looks. But more than anything, Oscar Robertson was a man possessed by an intelligence and a pride equal to his talent. He refused to play the part of showman for an audience that did not respect him. He refused to smile for cameras that had no interest in who he was. and he refused to be grateful or agreeable to a nation that did not treat him as an equal. He was all of those things. Many of them did not make him popular. He was also the most complete, versatile basketball player the game had ever seen. He was the original triple threat, best known for his acrobatic drives to the basket, but possessing a nearly unblockable jump shot with an absurdly high release point that gave him total mastery of the mid-range. His follow-through extended high above his head, stretching his arm as far as it would go, to the point that by the time the ball was released, he was pushing it off with a single hand. Even Bill Russell never got the hang of swatting it away. He was an outrageously efficient scorer, routinely finishing as one of the league leaders in field goal and free throw percentage. He led the league in foul shot accuracy twice, and spent 12 seasons as one of the top 15 shooters in the NBA. It's not a totally fair comparison, but Michael Jordan had only 4 seasons in which he finished in the league's top 20. Physically, he was the wilt of his position. 6'5" and 205 pounds of grace, fluidity, toughness, and resolve. Physically superior to every other player at his position that wasn't named Jerry West, Sam Jones, Hal Greer, or Casey Jones. He was described as the complete fundamentalist. Everything done the way it should be, with as few frills and flair as possible. He kept his head up at all times, eyeing the court and dissecting the game with razor-sharp vision, looking for cutters, dismantling double teams, and playing with tremendous control. He might have only officially averaged a triple-double for 1 season, but when you average his first 5 seasons in the NBA together, you get figures of 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists per night. For 5 straight years. That is what Oscar Robertson gave your team on a nightly basis. He finished in the top 5 in scoring and passing for 9 straight years, made 9 consecutive All-NBA first teams, and won an MVP award smack dab in the middle of the primes of Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. He illuminated the darkness of basketball's frontier, a pioneer in a true sense of the word. He invented the high post game and the fadeaway jump shot. When he retired from basketball after the 1974 season, Oscar Robertson was the game's all-time leading passer and its second all-time leading scorer. To date, only LeBron James has passed him in both categories. Before Magic Johnson became an icon as a 6'9" point guard, there was Oscar Robertson. Before Larry Bird and LeBron embodied the idea of a total basketball player, there was Oscar Robertson. Before Michael Jordan filled up the cup, screamed at his teammates, and settled onto his throne, there was Oscar Robertson. And in case that isn't enough, in case you think Oscar was just one of the greatest players ever, he's also the longest tenured president of the National Basketball Players Association ever, holding the position from 1965 to his retirement in '74. In 1970, the Players Association filed an antitrust lawsuit against the league, who was attempting to buy out the ABA and maintain the sport's status quo. Instead, the Robertson v. National Basketball Association suit wanted to block the merger and allow the competition between the two leagues to drive up players' salaries, while also seeking a host of other institutional changes. After years of fighting, including trips to Washington, D.C. attending Senate hearings, when the suit was settled in 1976, the draft was reformed, free agency was instituted, arcane compensation laws were done away with, and the merging of the two leagues was set to go through. In other words, Oscar Robertson helped usher in the NBA we enjoy today. Free agency, television deals, the merger, sky-high contracts, super teams, the draft process. It all happened because of Robertson versus the NBA. It's just another thing he did. He helped make the NBA a better league, and in turn helped make the lives of everyone associated with the NBA in nearly every capacity better.
I didn't know that.
But why should we remember that? Most of us don't remember what team he played for. Oscar Robertson's time with the Cincinnati Royals ended after the 1970 season. Bob Cousy had been hired as the head coach, and made the unconscionable decision to come out of retirement and play alongside Oscar as a player coach for 7 games at the age of 42. The two had already developed an adversarial relationship that was bordering on a full-blown power struggle. Cousy resented Oscar's popularity and influence in the town. And Oscar never did get along with coaches much. Cousy's playing stint was the last straw. Oscar had it. After the season, he was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks for peanuts. Fans gave up on the franchise, and 2 years later, the Royals would leave Cincinnati. In Milwaukee, Oscar joined Lou Alcindor, a young center who would eventually go by the name Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. By that point, Oscar was 32 years old, and, thanks to his outstanding conditioning and consistency, had played in nearly every basketball game possible for the last 13 years. Despite his production in years prior, he was nearing the tail end of his prime, and he knew it. After seeing Alcindor's remarkable abilities, Robertson accepted a more secondary role on the Bucks, focusing less on doing everything a basketball player could possibly do, and instead focusing on efficient scoring, setting up teammates, and a more professional form of leadership. In Robertson's first season with the team, the 1971 Milwaukee Bucks experienced one of the most successful campaigns of basketball ever. 66 wins, a 20-game win streak, a 12-2 playoff record, and the franchise's first NBA championship. For the first time since he led Crispus Attucks to the first perfect season in Indiana history, Oscar Robertson was a champion. Finally, a ring would grace the fingers of one of the game's most important figures. Of all the footage I have seen of this man, this footage is unprecedented. Here, he is happy, smiling, hugging, celebrating. Here, the career of Oscar Robertson had been validated. A champion, now and forever. Over the next 3 years, Oscar's production slowly began to decline as he aged. In 1974, his final season, the Bucks held a celebratory Oscar Robertson night. The stated intention was to honor the career of one of the game's most important players. The real reason was to start pushing Oscar out the door. He saw through it immediately. Another grudge to hold on to. Robertson's NBA career ended ignobly. In Game 7 of the 1974 Finals in Milwaukee, the Celtics defeated the Bucks, helped in no small part by Oscar's 2-for-13 shooting effort.
Damn.
The most statistically productive guard for the league's first 40 years, ended his career with 11 assists, 6 points, and 3 rebounds.
Game 7 in the finals.
Once he was gone, he was gone. Never given a head coaching opportunity, never given a front office gig. He did little handshaking or picture taking once he left, instead opting to spend the next 20 years decrying the leagues of Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan. He moved back to Cincinnati with his family and became a businessman. There he stays, venturing out every so often to attend games or popping up in headlines wondering aloud why Russell Westbrook isn't winning MVPs every year. It's hard to pinpoint where Robertson's anger comes from. I don't mean to simplify him as a human being or the struggles he's experienced in trying to play armchair psychologist. But I think one of the things that still bothers him is the fact that he's largely unheralded. He deserves to be venerated. He wants to be remembered. And I think it bothers him that he has to ask for something that he's already earned. To me, there are 5 players that serve as the founding fathers of what basketball is. Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, and Oscar Robertson. Jerry and Elgin were losing, sure, but at least they were losing in the finals. And at least they lived in LA, where they were part of an ecosystem of stars and celebrities. Wilt had his own criticism, but he was a force of personality, a man with charisma that outmatched his gargantuan size and always seemed to be bigger than the team he played for. And Russell had the all-time trump card. He was the winner, the all-time champion. All the while, Oscar was out in the Midwest, just trying to carve out a legacy for himself. West and Elgin could always go back to LA. They were always Lakers. They will always be Lakers. Wilt did the impossible on a nightly basis for two of basketball's oldest franchises. And Bill Russell was the man who built a dynasty for perhaps basketball's signature franchise. They belong to those teams and to those fans. A Laker fan today has respect for Elgin Baylor because their father told them about him, and that father was told by his father. Those lineages of fans keep those memories alive. Fan bases keep them relevant forever. Talk to any Celtics fan in their 20s. Even though they weren't alive for it, do you think Larry Bird is any less relevant to them? Well, Oscar Robertson doesn't have that. The Royals began as the Rochester Seagrams in the 1920s. Over the next 100 years, they would be the Rochester Royals, the Cincinnati Royals, the Kansas City Omaha Kings, the Kansas City Kings, and finally the Sacramento Kings in 1985. From one coast of the country to the other, never staying in one place long enough to feel important. Along the way, they experienced the professional prime of someone who, in another life, in a different circumstance, might have been remembered as the greatest basketball player who ever lived. For 10 years, that player redefined what it meant to be a basketball player. He became the model of his position and is the standard of versatility that is still used today. The Sacramento Kings have not played a playoff game since 2006, the longest playoff drought in NBA history. They have become...
So this video's older, but just so you know, if you haven't been following like modern day basketball, the Sacramento Kings did make it back to the playoffs this season, or this season that just passed, which would be the 2022-2023 NBA season. So they made it to the 2023 NBA playoffs, and they performed admirably well and lost to the Golden State Warriors, but they got a bright future.
Arguably the worst basketball franchise in existence. And there, hanging in the rafters of the saddest arena in professional basketball, is the jersey of Oscar Robertson. Thousands of miles away from the place where he changed the game of basketball as we know it. He still gets some flowers. The NBA recently named its Western Conference Championship trophy after him. College basketball's oldest Player of the Year award, which has been given out by the United States Basketball Writers Association since 1959, now bears his name. And he was one of 5 people inducted into the College Basketball Hall of Fame's founding class, along with Dean Smith, John Wooden, Bill Russell, and Dr. James Naismith. But on the whole, Oscar Robertson's memory has faded. His name still commands respect. It's a name that fans of the game know to be important, that they associate with 1 or 2 bits of trivia, but one that they are quick to move past. It's hard to blame them, but it doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. Oscar Robertson might not have a fan base to tell his story, but that's what makes it even more important that his story is told. We should all be Oscar Robertson fans. We should all tell his story. Without him, the game wouldn't be what it is today. That will always be true, even if the game does forget it.
Damn, Clayton. Damn. These videos you put together. Damn, Clayton. Clayton's videos be hitting the heart, bro. It's a goddamn Clayton. You tugging at my heartstrings, bro. Golly. Listen, man, I see a lot of that stuff. I had no idea. The stuff that I talked about in my opening remarks was more or less the gist of it. And a couple other things. But, like, his story, man, that is an amazing story. Amazing story. From college all the way through the end of his career. I didn't know that, man. I didn't know obviously, practically all African Americans going through life back then had to deal with the prejudice, the racism, the social injustice, and all that stuff on a much larger scale than today, and more, and also because there wasn't anything being done about it back then. It was like accepted by many. Just put it that way. Not to get into the weeds, but yeah. But I never heard his story and what he had to go through, and how the coaches and players many times didn't have his back, and he held on to that. He held on to that. Bitter. And yeah, I can't blame him. I can't blame him. Holding the grudge, man. Especially when it comes to that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? But and then just other things throughout his NBA profile. Other things, just holding grudges with people. I didn't know he was that fiery. I didn't know he was that much of a hard ass. Berating his teammates. Which, listen, there's different forms of leadership. There is. Like they said, Michael Jordan did it, but it brought people together. It brought the best out of them. But when he did it, for whatever reason, he scared his teammates. Now, people feared Jordan, but it's a different kind of fear. You know what I mean? But yeah, and you gotta have the right kind of personnel to be able to deal with personalities like that. And if you can find people that can respond favorably to that kind of leadership, then awesome. But not everybody can. Not everybody can. It's a different type of leadership. But if you can get people on board with a player like that, that's a dangerous squad. That's a dangerous squad. They out for blood. And there's nothing you can say or do that can get in their head and affect their game, because their leader is that guy. You know what I mean? I didn't know that, man. That's crazy. Crazy as hell. And I'm happy he got the hell away from the Royals onto the Milwaukee Bucks. Hooked up with Lou Alcindor, and ended up winning a championship. And what a way to go out, man. Make it to the finals, Game 7. You end up having a poor game, and then you fade into retirement. I would like to know the details, if there were any more details, when he said, they gave him a good goodbye. The Milwaukee Bucks. It was the Milwaukee Bucks, yeah. Thank you for everything. But I want to know the details, because, it was paraded around, as, oh, thank you for everything. But it was more of like they were just trying to get him out of there. So I want to know the details about why. Did anything happen specifically? Was he willing to play more, but they didn't want him there anymore? I'm curious. But he also brought up a good point. The dude was just consistently great, right? But I guess he didn't have many, iconic games, legacy-defining games, otherworldly games. But that doesn't diminish the fact that this guy was consistently great day in and day out. You knew what you were getting from him. And he was giving you something that not many people could give you. Hell, even today, not many people could give you that. Let alone for his era. You know what I mean? And still, through all of that, the fact that he's a bit of a lone wolf, kind of sticks to himself, doesn't talk to anybody, holds grudges, all that stuff, doesn't really communicate with many people in the NBA circles. Despite all that, the dude still has a legendary career. And Clayton's right, man. We gotta tell this man's story. Even, I thought I knew, like, from amongst my peers and people that I grew up with in my age group, I feel like I knew more about Oscar Robertson than most of people around my age. But even with that being said, I knew very little about Oscar Robertson and his story. Now I know something. Now I know. Crazy, man. Clayton's an excellent storyteller, man. I tell you, excellent storyteller, and presents it in such a way that's truthful, honest, and largely unbiased. Man, yeah, got to give it to the guy. He's spot on and consistent with that, from what I've been able to observe from his videos. His shot, though, man, his shot was crazy. I just kept looking the whole time. I'm looking at that shot. I was like, that is an interesting jump shot. It's like the other arm goes way out here. I don't know if I'm in the view of the camera there. It's like, oh, it's an interesting shot, man. But he had it, man. And a couple times he's hitting him with them little hezzy crossover joints, blowing past him, finishing with the layup. Hell of a player, man. Hell of a player. I saw he had a interview with Russell Westbrook there. I guess upon Westbrook averaging a triple-double, he had to sit down with the Big O. Didn't know that. So if I might actually react to that video, because I would like to see this conversation with him and Russ. And it sounds like he's a Russell Westbrook fan from what it sounds like. You know, constantly rooting for Russ. And that's good to see, man, because the media has done... They absolutely destroyed Russell Westbrook, man. I feel bad for him, but at the same time, Russell should have never went to... I'm a Laker fan, and I always wanted Russ to come to the Lakers, but not with LeBron James. This is just a bad... It's just a bad idea, man, that they can't play together. And I was mad when Russ came to the Lakers because I knew he was going to get thrown under the bus, and I knew everything that was going to happen. Now the guy just signed... Now you got people like Dylan Brooks, who isn't half the player Russell Westbrook was or is today, still isn't half the player Russ is today, getting way more money than him. Blows my mind. Skip Bayless, you a punk, bro. You too, Shannon Sharp. You too. You ain't as bad as Skip, but you was right there, keying and on with him. Anyway, that's it about Russell Westbrook. Oscar Robertson, we won't forget you, brother. Not here on Boo TV. We won't. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you know about Russ. about Oscar. Let me know in the comment section. Can you answer any of the questions I had? Give me more context. Would love to hear it. If you got a chance to see him play, I would love to hear your testimony, what you think about the Big O. All right? Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and I catch you on the next one. Yo, baby.